Hi there, welcome to a focused video where we look at it from a different point of view in regard to a survivor who may be dealing with PTSD, complex PTSD, and a past where they've gone through all kinds of encounters and traumatic events. Today is about looking at it from the other side, a different point of view, the outside looking in. A lot of my videos have been trying to understand and provide the perspective for the survivor, but such as with a friendship or a relationship, like a new one, there is another person involved, possibly an individual that doesn't have PTSD or simply doesn't have the same struggles that the survivor is facing right now. The reason why it's important to understand both sides is to complete that story, whether that be a past or a present. It's important to know the wants, the needs, desires, and fears from the survivor's point of view. But it's also important to provide the wants, the wishes, and the hopes from the new partner or the new friend that's in the presence of a survivor. So it gives a bit of third person perspective and allows the survivor to learn about other people in different ways. Not learning negatively, but learning in a positive way as an indirect approach to healing and recovery, because their journey is important and individual, but in some areas it can be shared. And in some areas, besides therapy and talking with an individual, there can be passive healing on the sideline when making progress in other ways, as in a friendship building or a relationship strengthening. But the pace of it all can vary, and each situation is different. So for today, whilst my thoughts, my opinions only are exclusive and they don't represent the whole population of people out there, that my beliefs and what I think don't represent every other individual out there, I'm going to be using myself today, my thoughts towards a survivor, a person dealing with PTSD, survivor's guilt, and maybe even freezes or low episodes. Today, I want to share with you my raw, genuine, unfiltered thoughts. It's just me. In this room, only me and my mind. There's no influences about. And the reason why that's important is to provide an alternative point of view, to share and show with a survivor that when it comes to fears, when it comes to concern and the uncertainty and unknown of the present and future, that when dealing with another individual out there, whether they be deemed as more healthy or labelled as perfect, well, today I can show that perspective that not everything is how it seems. In the mind of a survivor that may picture other people and moments as threats or too good to be true, or an individual is too good for me, as in the survivor's point of view. It's about breaking the ice and sharing the reality in a grounded but positive way. So what's going to be done today is a form of role play. The role play being me speaking for myself with my own thoughts and beliefs. If I knew of someone, if I was around someone, if I was friends with someone, or more to put it, because of the depth that I want to get through today, if I was in a relationship with a person who struggles with trauma, PTSD, maybe OCD, survivor's guilt, whichever, some of them or one. A scenario, that's how it's structured today. I don't want it to be invasive. I just want to provide an alternative point of view, because understanding a survivor, very important, but a survivor themselves wants to be understood. A survivor themselves, what they want and wish for deep within, they hope it transmits to the other half, the other partner, but they may not be able to get it across. They may not be able to share it with their voice or communication because of struggles and barriers. Today, I want to try and break that barrier down and give my thoughts on the matter, what I would hope for, what I would wish, and partially need. But this is exclusive to my opinion. As an important disclaimer, today's video is not about being negative or labeling what's wrong and what's bad. It's not about demands or asking or expecting. It's just an opinion, and that is it, what I think. And when I say what I wish for or what I hope for, as in hoping for the best with them, hoping that they are able to heal, or hoping that things can change, but for the sake of their own benefit besides my own. Because whilst I'm talking from my point of view, I don't want it to come across as controlling or selfish or demanding, okay? So always know it's just an opinion. And as well, I'm making this video because I did do a bit of a post earlier inquiring about it, and shout out to the people that did give a thumbs up to the post to let me know it was worth doing, and that's why we're here right now. So it's a unique style. I just wanted to give you that disclaimer and heads up before we start, just so you know what to expect. And once again, if any of it gets too much or too full, you can always pause the video, take a break, relax, stretch the body, get a drink. You can also return back to watching this video another day, and you can rewatch this video as many times as you need, whatever's best and what helps you. That's what's important. If you are interested in these type of videos and deeper in regard to PTSD, complex PTSD, childhood, trauma, and so much more, the full psychology playlist is available top right corner where the I symbol is, just up there. If you click on the I symbol, you get a drop down menu box with the playlist and the odd loose video attached. So, with that all being said, let's begin. What I've listed below, or what I'm going to talk about, are certain patterns and traits and trauma responses that a survivor of trauma, PTSD and more may face and may show as a trauma response during a new friendship, or more so, a brand new relationship, how they act and how they go about, what they do and what they don't do. It's to shine light on the negatives and the fears, and to replace it with hope, and to replace it with what I think and what I believe. Because whilst they are in a dark place, I, in my opinion, will still be able to see or feel the light within when around the right person. That's why I want to do it as a scenario. If I met someone, a person who's got PTSD, survivor's guilt, etc., and I was getting close to them, I was attracted to them, how would it go? How would they act? I said, with respect, every person and every situation can be different, but just to give a scenario, let's create one, okay? So, me being in the presence of another person who struggles. One of the first likely signs would be arm's length, both physically and more so emotionally, whether that be online or in real life. I understand the arm's length. In a situation where there's communication, it's more understandable. And as for patience, that's what I would display, because I would never want to rush, never want to push, never want to force. Now, granted, maybe I could be too patient. Everyone is different, but I do feel that my patience is there when there's understanding. That's what's most important. If there wasn't clarity as to why there was arm's length, I would be a little confused. But in all fairness, anyone would be, even outside of a friendship or relationship. Anything in life where there's no closure or not much understanding or backstory, it can be a confusing time. But in a situation and scenario where I have met an individual, there is some open communication, there is a backstory behind the arm's length, I would understand them. I wouldn't expect, I wouldn't demand. I'd allow them to do what they want to do and what they need to do within reason. So, what are the features of arm's length and how could it escalate with time? Because in fairness, a relationship or friendship can start off quiet, reserved, because of protectiveness, scanning the room, scanning the other individual. Could be shyness, could be a variety of different feelings. Would I take that personal? No. Would I understand? Absolutely. Because certain areas I would understand and have deep patience, because what I say today is also based on, if I was in a similar position, what I would hope for, what I would wish for. So in a sense, treat those the way you would want to be treated yourself. I see the importance behind that. And with my own traits and, for example, shyness, I would be able to relate or understand the cautiousness of another individual. Or if the survivor, let's word it like that so it's clearer. If the survivor was going at a very steady, slow pace for the sake of themselves, their own safety and protection, based on whatever they've gone through in the past, I understand and I don't take it personal, okay? So the early stages, for example, can be nervous, can be difficult, can be a little excitement because it's something brand new, it's something interesting and more. It can be a variety of different emotions and responses, but I do understand for a survivor, if they were to have a mixture of positive emotions and negative emotions, it would make sense because they're still dealing with current struggles and the past. I wouldn't expect the past to be dropped just like that, and I wouldn't expect their cautiousness to be lowered or their guard. They are who they are, and they've adapted the way they have, either by having no choice or they felt it was the safest approach. And if they continue that onwards around me, early stages, it's understandable from my point of view. Now, examples. Hiding daily struggles. That can be what they get up to during the day, how their day actually was, how they actually felt. A survivor can wear a mask, present themselves in a positive, functional, busy way. The mask that they wear, they could appear quite, set in place, as in what they say and how they describe themselves and what they describe about what they've done is to almost like appear as the perfect friend, or more so the perfect partner. A survivor may use a defense mechanism to want to be able to blend in and be like everyone else, to avoid the past, avoid being thought of less, avoid being given that pity and that questioning and interrogation, to just be like everyone else, to blend in and to have normal experiences and to be treated like a normal person. By wearing a mask early on through communication, in whatever way that may be, how they describe themselves, what they do or what they've done, how their day was and how they feel. When a survivor says that they're good, they may mean that they're okay. When a survivor says that their day was okay, it might mean it wasn't too great, it was a bit horrible, it was terrible, it was rough, it was draining today. But why do they not say that? Why do they not share that? Because a survivor may want to portray a perfect image, a functioning, strong front. They fear if they show their true side, true self, any vulnerabilities, in their mind, and based on whatever happened in the past, it may make them feel less of a person, or weak, or too open, and fear losing the other partner, fear losing me, as example. So, what's my thoughts on the mask? Well, honestly, if a survivor I knew of was wearing a mask, I would wish and hope that they can drop the mask and be the person that they want to be, not the person that they feel they need to be. Okay, maybe around familiar faces and legacy individuals, from family, toxic family, to friends, to best friends, to colleagues, to clients. That survivor has been around those sort of people much longer than someone like me. So I understand there's a history there, there's maybe an understanding, but also it might be compartmentalized, as in how they are with those people can be different to one another and categorized, just like how it may be with myself if I was the other half in a relationship. So I do understand that, the compartmentalization, boxing up the memories, boxing up the feelings, boxing up the interactions with the different sets and groups of people, requiring different levels of emotion, different levels of commitment. So to the colleagues and clients, it's low risk. You don't have to offer much. You don't have to give much. It's small talk, hi, goodbye, move on. As with friends, family, you've known them, there's a bit of a connection, there is a level of trust, may have been through the wars together in other ways, but there can still be secrets, and deep secrets a survivor may keep from those people, either to avoid being triggered, avoid any confrontation, interrogation, avoid any toxic traits within like family members or any odd friends, and then also closer friends, a survivor avoiding in preventing worrying the best friend if there was a flare-up, if it was a difficult day, if they weren't feeling too good, if there was a warning sign as in their health, and so on. So my understanding behind the mask is to perform, to be treated fine and normal, to avoid questioning, interrogation like a therapy session, and to just move on in life. But what I feel is when a person wears a mask, they're covering and hiding their true feelings. And if I was with a survivor, I would hope that they could show their true feelings, whether that be positive or negative, because at the end of the day, I wouldn't think less of them, I would think more of them. I feel that if a survivor showed their darkness, that closeness and that appreciation would grow more. I would think more of someone that is able or tries to be in that position. It's not just all about me, it's about them too. Because I can imagine a survivor having to wear a mask, pretending to be okay, is exhausting, tiring, and demanding on top of everything else in life. And if they're in a new situation, they've met another person in their life with more commitment and more at stake, as in me, as in a relationship, for example, they're already dealing with those different boxes of feelings, emotions, and reactions to the different groups of people. When I come along, I might be put into a separate box. So how that survivor acts and reacts amongst each different person, you get a different side to that survivor. And there might be a time where, as in a relationship, you get to see their real true self, but early days and onwards, that arm's length may show, and the survivor may hold everyone at arm's length. And I do get that, but I would hope and wish that they were able to take the mask off. They don't have to perform for me. An individual doesn't have to be bubbly around me. An individual doesn't have to be all happy, loud, and noisy. I'm perfectly okay with a person being quiet or speaking slow, or the pitch talking quietly, because not every moment in life needs to be filled with, lots of noise or lots going on. Simply staying still and staying in silent is enough communication and language to set the tone and to make important memories and milestones in their own way. If I got to be in the presence of a survivor that lowered their mask, I would be very proud of them. I mean, just them existing in this world, I'd be proud of them, because that might sound a bit silly, but the reality is, based on what they may have gone through previously in the past, which has been difficult, then having to deal with it daily onwards, and anything else that's happened in between, just existing in this world is hard enough. So for them to be present in some way, that is a big positive to them. So I would be proud of the survivor, the person who I knew, okay? But I want to try and touch upon everything so I don't miss anything out. So I might go over it here and there just to make sure I've cleared all areas, okay? So when being in the presence of someone that wears a mask, I understand the commitment, the struggles, the energy that it may require, and how it can lead the person feeling depleted by the end of the day or at certain points through life. That the mask was able to drop, that the connection, that my attraction to them would still remain the same and arguably grow more to see their true self. Sometimes I can see the true self, or I can sense it through the shield. Now that's not to put the survivor in danger, as in their shield and their protection levels, what they use to protect themselves. I'm just saying that just my own ability, or sometimes what I can sense and pick up on, I can sense that there is more to it, to the situation, to a survivor. If I knew of a survivor, how they presented themselves, how they wore a shield, how they appeared under control, busy, whether that be successful, whether that be happy, and so on. What I would say is, it could create a contradiction, but that's just without the full knowledge, right? In the early stages, if I was with a survivor, but I didn't know the backstory, but I did sense the arm's length, without that clarity and backstory, it would be slightly confusing that there is a person that appears to be functioning, moving on in life. But what about our situation? But when there's that clarity, as in what they do and who they are, that's not who they really are at heart. Who they really are at heart is who they want to be with me. That is what I would appreciate, and it would mean a lot. But understandably, to get to that point, it's down to the survivor to make the choice, to make the move. It doesn't all come down to what I want, what I wish for. It also matters based on what the survivor wants. What do they want out of it? Are they willing? Are they able? Are they ready? Do they want to remove that mask? Or is it easier to keep up? To a survivor's mind, they may feel that they have to wear the mask to appear professional, but then they also have to wear the mask in a relationship to appear the perfect partner. But that's the thing. I don't need a perfect partner. I don't need a perfect relationship. I just want and hope for it to be real. Not perfect, but real. And when an individual wears a mask, it is real, as in the reason as to why they're doing it. But as for their true intent, their true feelings within that are more real, they're hidden behind a shield. And I would hope that at some point that mask could ease down. Not always in public, but privately, one-on-one, or away from all the noise and chaos. Because in a sense, for as long as that mask is worn, it's draining and tiring upon the survivor, and they don't deserve that. They deserve peace. They deserve the ability to just relax in the presence of another individual, the partner, the friend, myself, so on. They should be able to be what they want, do what they want, be who they really are, without the fear of consequence, without the fear of abandonment, without the fear of being thought of less. Based on what they've possibly gone through in the past, it can reinforce why they are cautious, why they wear a shield, and why their wall is high up. But if there was ever a day where someone that I knew, it lowered for one day, for one moment, to see their true self, that would be a gift in its own right. And one would be proud of that person because the strength that it takes to get to that point. And the more complex or the darker or the more encounters that they've had in the past which haven't gone well, whether that be online, in real life, or it be psychological, mental, trauma, stalking, bad encounters, where it got to a point of internalizing, this is just how it is in life, this is just how people are, and for that I need to wear a mask to protect myself, to be in a presence where I come across a survivor like that. And if with time there's that understanding that it doesn't have to be that way, not everything is dangerous, there is still some good in this world. If they ever were able to touch, feel and sense that, that would be really good. But I understand it takes time, it takes patience, and most importantly, it takes consistency. Because the very things that a survivor, the other half, may need or want, it would take consistency to instill it. What happened in the past, promises and positives, but never delivering. Instead, a previous partner turning out negative, bad, hurtful. For someone like me, I'd understand that it could take months, it could take a year, maybe a bit over. I don't expect closure or closeness immediately. I don't expect the survivor to just drop everything and be who they want to be, because it's taken so long for that survivor to get where they are now compared to where they were once in the past. And whilst things may still not be perfect, and there could be unprocessed trauma, there could be bad times and relapses, etc. Once again, it revolves back to they're still existing in this world, and that requires a lot of strength in itself. Even if they don't feel strong, they're strong for existing. They're strong for trying. If I'm in the presence of a survivor that's trying to get close, trying to take leaps of faith, one or two, whether it's frequent or very infrequent, even if it's just one time, I'd be proud of them for trying, because they don't have to, it's their choice. And if they made the choice to want to be with me, despite their struggles, their darkness, I'd be honoured to be by their side, and so on. So, beside hiding the mask, if I knew of someone that was hiding their daily struggles or how their day was often going, I understand that a survivor may hide it because they don't want to bring me down. They don't want to put me down. They don't want to put me in a bad mood. Now, the way I operate or the way my mind works could be drastically different to other humans out there. The darkness doesn't consume me. The darkness doesn't put me down. It's the uncertainty. Now, I am an overthinker, so if I don't know, I'm going to try and put the pieces together. Sometimes I might think the worst case scenario because it's a defensive mechanism within my own brain and what I've gone through over time in life. Different situations for everyone, okay? That's why my thoughts can't represent other humans out there from the other side in the presence of someone struggling, okay? But still, just being honest. So, if darkness was to be shared, if the survivor was to share that their day today was horrible, or it was terrible, or it was a tough day, bad encounters with people, a relapse, a panic attack, crying, feeling isolated, or not having the strength to do certain things, not having the strength to go out, not having the strength to go to work or something, what would I think? What would I genuinely feel? I'd be greatly appreciative that they were able to share that with me. I don't expect them to. I understand why they may hide it, because they want to appear busy and functional, because they may fear if they're not, or they show how they really are on a daily basis or on the odd bad day, beside not wanting to drag me down, they don't want me to react negatively. And I don't take that personally because I understand trust issues can be a real thing regardless of who you're around. You can be around the best person possible, but in the early stages, you might be a bit cautious and tense just because of the past. And it's the past and the fears of the treatment then that overrules the present and the possible logical thoughts and feelings. So I do get it from both sides. But with a survivor, I would hope that they were able to share how their day was or just how they're feeling. Even if they felt bad, even if they had a bad day, I would want to know. Because in knowing, there is closure on a small scale, which can lead to deeper understanding, and so on. It helps me. If certain actions and abilities that can be performed by the survivor, if it helps them, at times it can also help me. Help me in understanding, or help me in that closure in the mind so one doesn't overthink. This is what I mean. Humans can work together, heal independently, but also passively together in different ways at a steady pace, for example. Not every situation, but moments here and there. I look at it through the lens that I would want the survivor to be able to share how they really feel and how their day was, because I wouldn't want them to feel that they have to hide it and keep it from me to preserve this perfect relationship or status. That the messy times or the dark moments do not taint that relationship or status. That their struggles or their dark moments don't make me think less of them. Things remain the same, if not arguably, things get closer, but like in a positive direction, or how I think of them, thinking more highly of them, not less. But they may have the fear that it could be the opposite, because that's what's happened in the past. Now, the past is the past, but their struggles are real and in the present, and the thoughts that linger. So I do respect that and understand the cautiousness, but for the sake of their own health, for the sake of them not feeling isolated, but being able to release how they feel, could also help them so they don't bottle things or so it doesn't bubble under. If they release it, then it maintains like a steady flow within the mind and feelings too. And then with that understanding towards me, that understanding of patterns and moments where maybe time out is needed, some quiet time, or just no talking, just sitting side by side, metaphorically or physically in real life. You know? For me, just to be able to know how things are, good or bad, is a big positive, which I do value. I don't demand, but it's a positive, hopeful thought to have in a way. I understand that a survivor does what they do for a reason, but I wouldn't want them to feel that they have to hide things from me. And whilst that happens, it builds in their own isolation and withdrawal, because it's one thing having no one and feeling alone, but it's another thing being around other people, even close ones, not being able to share, having to hide it, having to wear a mask, having to pretend everything's perfect or okay when it really isn't. That builds more isolation itself. And if I was with a survivor, such as a relationship, I would never want them to feel isolated or feel trapped within their own thoughts. I'd hope that they could open at some point, often or here and there, whether that be silently, whether it be non-verbal communication, whether it be in expressive ways. If a person can't get their words out through emojis, short words, anything, forms of communication, because there's many different ways you can get your point across in life, and what can bridge the gap between the voiceless and the person on the outside that's trying to learn, so both can find a way through together. That's the way I see that. Other aspects which may be described as arm's length could be hiding personal details, whether that be locations, whether that be hanging out, whether that be introducing one to another, extended and beyond, and friends and family and all that. It can be a very tricky time, and it's not something to be expected or to happen immediately. It could happen down the line, but for a survivor it can be very scary, because they've let people into their life in the past. They've let people into their homes. They've let people into their hearts. And for the times it's not worked, and that vulnerability shown, and that openness to be chewed out and spat out can hurt heavily and cause anxiousness, loss of power, loss of control. I personally would never want to put someone in that position or make someone feel like that, or kind of like trigger some kind of past where they've been once. I wouldn't want them to be there again. Understand the personal aspect that a survivor in some way may live a double life, compartmentalization and boxing, different associations and connections with different people out there in different areas and orders, and then there may be me, but it's seen as sacred, valuable, precious, handle with care, but it also means look but don't touch. It could mean keep encased in a frame to be able to admire it, to admire the potential, such as a relationship, me, them, but the fear of opening the case, not wanting that canvas to be tarnished, to be torn, teared, ripped, or creased. But what good does it do leaving it encased where no more progression can be made? It can be the same with personal details and the slow progression and the milestones in a friendship or relationship. Would I expect, would I demand, would I push for a survivor to get to that point? No. I would only hope passively inside change could occur with time, reinforced by the feeling of security, stability, and trust, something that needs to be built over time. It doesn't matter how good I may appear. It doesn't matter what they may think as in positively towards me. It's the core foundations that just being nice for one day, being kind for one day, giving compliments for one day just isn't enough. It might make the survivor feel good and all that, but I understand on a deeper level, and maybe within their mind, what they may think, It's going to take more than one day to get to a certain point. It might take days, it might take weeks, it might take months. But if I'm around the right person and there is a connection, it's worth waiting for, providing there is a form of communication in between, right? So, personal detail part can be a very sensitive area. Living a double life, as in acting and performing with those around them in their group's social circle, and then retreating back to someone like me and possibly being themselves or acting and being different within reason. So they still protect themselves, but they can just be a little different for the right reasons at times, whether it's frequent or infrequent. I get that. Because the integration of merging different worlds together, for the survivor to invite the other half, for example, to invite me into their world for the first time can be very scary, very daunting and risky. Doesn't matter how good I may appear. Doesn't matter how much of a good person I might be. In the moment and onwards, what matters is the consistency, the frequency in performance, support, stability, reassurance, and the natural positive actions. It takes time, and merging worlds together physically, mentally, and so on, at first can be a mountain to climb. So it's not expected to happen overnight. And not just their world, but their connections and people around them, how that merges with someone like me. It might feel scary, risky, or complicated, whether that be with friend groups, whether it be with their family and family of family. There could be complexities behind it, and we'll get to that later on. So be sure to stick around for that. My thoughts on that situation, because I understand it would be difficult for them. I wouldn't want to make it difficult for the survivor in that sense. So yeah. Now, moving on, other aspects. The survivor themselves hating being vulnerable. What do I think about that? If a person could be vulnerable with me, I would feel very lucky, because it's one thing a person without PTSD, without trauma, opening up or feeling comfortable. That's nice to know. But for someone that has gone through so much darkness, hell and back, and has built up a deep shield and wall, shutting off their true wants and desires, if there was ever a time where a survivor could be vulnerable with me, even if that's just for a day, even that's just for an hour in the day, I would feel very lucky, because it must have taken such strength for the survivor to get to that point to consider sharing their past or what's going on in their mind. But then also feeling lucky that out of everyone that they opened up to and shared, they chose me. It creates a positive feeling and I guess a level of warmth as well to know that they chose you, they chose me because of the dynamic, because of the understanding, because they feel safe. For a person to be vulnerable, they need to feel safe and secure. And if there's a split second where they are, such as with me, that's perfect. That's a big moment. It is. But when they hate being vulnerable, that can be a trauma response. It can be a hangover, a brief moment of regret, a brief moment of dread for opening up, feeling a loss of control possibly because they prided themselves or they promised themselves that they would never be vulnerable ever again, because the last time that they were, it was used against them, but they were hurt badly. So what's at stake and what they've gone through, I understand why they may hate themselves. They don't deserve to hate themselves, but I understand how the mind can work at times and go against one's self. The hate part can be quite a strong word, but that hate can be a form of a reflection of the past, mirrored by the hate of a former partner that told them being vulnerable isn't the way, forcing the survivor to not be vulnerable, and if they were, punishing them for it, forcing the survivor who's pure and has a heart to harden up, to almost go cold, and to wear a shield for that. Instilled in the brain, trying to rewire them what's right from what's wrong in a distorted lens, forcing the survivor to be something that they're not compared to what they originally were and what they wanted to share. They've gone through a lot. Of course, they can still think for themselves and make their own decisions whether they want to share or not. But due to the heaviness of the past, if there was ever a crack in the shield, a crack of vulnerability within reason, that'd be a big positive, and I would really appreciate that. I would see that as a big strength within them. The moment the survivor falls or hates themselves, the moment I catch them and remind them that it requires strength to be in that place. They may feel, because they've been convinced in the past, vulnerability equals weakness. But that was instilled into their head by a bad ex-partner who is speaking subjectively, just their opinion, which arguably could be irrelevant. Do they know what they're talking about? Maybe not. But they instilled it within the survivor to change their ways, unfortunately. But there's a time now, there's a time previous, where a person opens up, such as to me. That's a big positive. And when the survivor hates themselves or punishes themselves for doing that, I would remind that survivor, you may think it's weak to be vulnerable, but after everything that you've gone through, to even consider opening up, almost like Pandora's box, with all the risk involved, the risk of being hurt, the risk of being let down, the risk of being abandoned, the risk of being thought of less, the risk of being punished, and yet you made that choice, you made that chance, you took that leap and you tried, you made that effort to open up. Even if that's just for one day, even if it's just for a moment, you made that decision by yourself. You made that decision to open yourself up when in the past things went bad. You gave another chance. You put a chance upon me, and for that I would always be appreciative of. There's a lot stacked against the good, all the fears and the worries that could go through the mind of the survivor, yet they managed to find a way through, or they managed to find a moment just to open up a little, to lower their wall. That requires immense strength and resilience to go against the demons, to go against all the thoughts within, to go against all of the doubts, To be vulnerable requires strength in the first place to be able to go against the darkness and have the hope that it'll be positive when sharing, despite all the fear and the worry, requiring a strong level of emotional depth and strength to open and to share, even if it's just a little bit, because there is so much tension and resistance against the urge to open up. So if a survivor ever finds a way through to fight that urge, to fight that resistance, fighting anything requires strength. Fighting resistance requires emotional strength and at times physical strength. So for whatever that bad partner said in the past about vulnerability equals weakness, it's actually vulnerability equals a great deal of strength, and more so an immense amount of strength to open up and to give it another try after going through everything in the past. There's a lot more at stake, there's a lot more fear, there's a lot more risk. But when attempted, when there's an effort, it shows a strong level of hope, which is a positive within the survivor, even if they may not feel it at first hand. I would hope to be able to remind them of that if there was ever a time or a moment, right? So, In regard to the aspect of vulnerability and sharing, if there was ever a time where they felt that they overshared, it could trigger a trauma response of feeling deep shame of their past, what they were on the receiving end of, what they ended up doing, difficult positions in life that they were in, moments where they couldn't say no, moments where they had to survive, moments where they had to people please in order to avoid punishment. When it comes to oversharing, there can be a level or a feeling of deep shame for oversharing. Personal self-hatred it could be for the survivor. This relationship is perfect. This person, this partner is perfect. Why did I flush it down a toilet and ruin it by oversharing my dark past? Why did I overshare? They're going to think less of me now. I'm mortified. But in my position, as the other half, on the outside looking in, I'd understand their trauma response based on how they may think and feel and what they've gone through in the past. But as said, sharing a dark past only brings me closer to them instead of pushing me away. Granted, it might take time to process. It might take time for me to get my head around. That's not out of judgment, it's out of trying to understand completely so there are no misunderstandings, because the way my mind works, it can take time to process or to fully understand. I can't think of everything on the spot, and I can't always process everything on the spot. So whilst I don't have PTSD, I don't have trauma, in terms of just taking the time to learn and to go over it bit by bit is maybe something indirectly shared with a survivor that may process and reread and re-listen just to make sure that there is understanding. So you can see there is that bond, there is that external understanding and shared behavior, which is a positive bridging that gap. But me personally, I would never want this survivor to ever feel shame or guilt about themselves, their life or their past without dismissing what they've gone through. I would be thinking that to the survivor, their past is important and it makes them who they are now within reason. But their past is their past and it shouldn't dictate how they are or what they do next or be held back by it. But I do also understand it's not that easy to just close a chapter and move forwards. It's just my opinion on what I would hope and wish for if there was ever a time where they were able to consider a different perspective on themselves. That oversharing, I get it, to a survivor, it may feel like becoming a burden or throwing all the loose baggage upon the other person. I get a survivor may fear that if they overshare or if they already have done, they may think it's too much for the other partner to take, for the other person to carry. Is it going to cause stress, panic? Is it going to cause distress? Is it going to cause secondary trauma? What I would like to think within myself is that I'd be able to handle the darkness because it also means understanding. So even with dealing with difficult details and accounts of their past, it can also be treated as a positive. With dark information, it equals positivity, as in understanding. And with understanding, it creates patience and it creates more closeness. It can create more ease, less uncertainty, more calmness, and then that can circle all the way back to the other person, the survivor, in feeling that security, that stability, and feeling accepted, and so on. Because I would say, when a survivor opens up their past, they're doing it because they want the other person to know about them, to build that connection, to get closer, to not hide secrets, and they're trying. I sense that the survivor is really trying to get across to make those moves and to put everything on the table in a way. I also understand that maybe moments of oversharing is just simply because the survivor was that comfortable and relaxed that they were able to say a lot, and that things may have slipped out of the mouth by accident or what. At first, it might take time to process, like with anything in life, because anything that's important in life requires time. Anything important in life with decisions or reactions requires time if it's important and meaningful. That pause, that silence, isn't a moment of thinking less of the survivor or being overwhelmed with that darkness that's been shared. It's taking it serious. I'd take it serious. I'd try and understand and weigh it all up and so on, you know? If it wasn't important, then the person would be like, okay, whatever. But if it is important, it's okay, and maybe ask some questions just to get that closeness and to just for everything to be understood, so nothing is misunderstood, so nothing is undervalued, so nothing is disrespected. So with that understanding, it could help for the future as well, whether that be triggers or avoiding triggers, building a bond of safety and not through the lens of the past as in a trauma bond, but a healing bond. And through healing can come sharing. And when someone's comfortable or relaxed, they may overshare. In my mind, what I would think and feel is obviously I wouldn't want them to feel shame or guilt or anything like that. And if they did, that would be a shame, no pun intended. But I would see the positive within it. Even if they may not, the positive would be, yeah, you may have overshared. Yeah, it may feel to you it wasn't the right thing to do, but guess what? Maybe you were able to do that because for once in your life, you were that relaxed. Your guard was that low that things oozed out. And maybe it's something that you didn't want, or maybe it wasn't the right time. I understand that. But isn't it a positive though? A positive that for the first time in a long time, you got to a place, a moment where you could be or you could share whatever without the initial fear, without the initial regret, without the initial closed off nature as you may be other times or around other people. That's got to be a massive positive. Even if it's just a one-off, it shows that there is life within, there is a fight within, but there is still that natural, raw self of the survivor. A survivor that may feel cut off, isolated, or dead inside, or losing a part of them. Clearly, they never lost it, it was just hidden away. Because that one moment where that survivor does open and share their past, they're doing it because they're comfortable, they're safe, and they respect the other person. And to me, that would be a big step forwards. Understandably, though, it can be met with a step backwards. With each encounter, with each milestone, with each movement forwards, there can be so many steps made forwards, 2 steps, followed by 1 step back. Whether that be through intimacy, conversation deep, sharing, new milestone, the initial move, the initial leap of fate by the survivor is mixed with positivity, anxiousness, scared, shy, nervous, butterflies, whatever it might be. It can be a burst, a variety. It can be quite tense, intense, but positive as well. But then once it's happened, there can be a crash, not literally, like a low. After that adrenaline, those emotions have worn off, the person goes back to their normal baseline of how they feel. Sometimes can come reflection, sometimes can come regret. As the chemicals in the body are naturally, going back to normal, trying to settle back down, and that sudden high met with that sudden low, it could trigger certain feelings within because it's been a long time when they last felt that way. Amazing in the moment, but then after, a deep feeling of shame or guilt because they may have made that promise that they would never be that way again. or they would never do that again because of the fear of being hurt. But this time round, maybe they weren't hurt. Maybe this time round it turned out better. But still facing that feeling of a promise broken, I understand a survivor may punish themselves and feel bad about it, but they should never feel bad about being themselves. A survivor should never feel bad about being the person that they want to be around the other half. A survivor should never feel bad about sharing what really matters to them and what's had a profound impact and effect on them for them to be the way they are or feel the way they are. It all comes through learning and understanding, and all of that is important, especially when it's someone you know, someone that I would think highly of, such as in a relationship, as like what I've mentioned already. Okay? So the understanding is there, as in the struggles, the difficulties, and then the afterthoughts, the after feelings, and the low. But the process, regardless from start to finish, is positive. Whether it starts positive, ends negative, it's all important. And it would be important to me if in that situation. Okay? So, moving on. Other aspects of arm's length could be code words, where if I'm having a conversation with them in some way, the survivor could say, "I'm busy," or "Sorry, I've been really busy," or "I've been stupidly busy." There is truth to that, of course. And on a deeper level, there is absolute truth behind the survivor being busy. But the code word might mean they're not physically busy with stuff. They might be mentally busy, emotionally unavailable at that moment. They could be currently dealing with an episode silently, dealing with a flashback in the moment, dealing with a moment of sadness, dealing with a panic attack, going on in the moment or just before and recovering from it, dealing with a struggle, waking up the next day feeling different than the day before, taking some time out, taking a day off. I get that. A person can be busy, not just with work, but they can be busy with other commitments in life. A person can be busy with chores, activities. A person can be busy within their own head. They could be stood still. They could be sat down. They could be in bed. They could be on a sofa. They may use work as a mask to appear normal, functioning, and same situation, different day, because they don't want the other partner to worry, to fear, to feel low, to feel negative. They don't want to drag the other partner down. Like how I said about sharing how they feel during the day, how the day goes, what they've done, or with respect to what they're willing to share, of course. A survivor who shares how they really think and feel with themselves, with their day, that would not pull me down. But if a survivor considered not sharing with me out of fear of ruining my day or making me feel negative, I would say in response to that, that is a very selfless action. It's a big positive to them, but they don't have to suffer in silence in that way. But I get why they do what they do. And it's very kind of them to not want to, tarnish or ruin my day or cause me any problems. The reality is, if I'm in a relationship such as with a survivor, providing it's acceptable in a non-controlling way, their problems, their struggles can also, within reason, become my problems, my struggles, as in trying to be supportive or provide perspective without taking over. I just want to make that clear because it's very important that, because I do get a survivor has dealt with stuff in the past and other people may have taken over in different ways, and that can be triggering. I wouldn't want to do that or put the person in that position. I just hope that they could share without the worry of how I may react, So, similar with code words. I wouldn't want a survivor to feel ashamed or feel low or feel negative just because they can't function in the moment, or because they can't function during the day, or they're busy elsewhere with their thoughts, their mind, their noise. I wouldn't want them to feel less of a person or bad for being that way, because it can happen. Shit happens, unexpected stuff happens. When dealing with trauma and the past, that can flare up unexpectedly. When dealing with survivor's guilt, that can flare up unexpectedly, especially when maybe met with a high, a positive day, a positive moment, a good time with a friend or a good time with a partner, in real life or digitally on screen, hanging out, having fun, laughing, joking, and then on the way back or returning back to their real or their internal world, feeling a sudden feeling of regret and guilt because of the survivor's guilt. We'll get to that later, some of the more important points. But yeah, when a person like a survivor may be busy, not excuses in a negative way, but they may use alternatives to explain why they're busy and hiding the real reason behind why they're busy, or hiding the possibility that they're emotionally unavailable. They don't want to show they're emotionally unavailable because they may feel that fear of being cold or not being able to reciprocate that love to the other partner that may be deserving of it. Like, in my mind, if I knew of a survivor that was having a bad day, I don't expect them to reciprocate or be all loving or kind in that way. I don't expect that. I don't expect them to use that 1% of battery on me because they need it for themselves. If they're dealing with the smallest amount of energy or mental capacity, I don't expect or demand for that to be given to me. I'd hope that they could give it to themselves to do what they need to do, or to just recharge, providing there is a bit of communication for that clarity and understanding, you know? But yeah, I get being busy obviously can happen, but other times being busy can mean other things, which the survivor may not want to share because they don't want me to worry. I respect that. But I would hope that there would be a point or a time where they don't have to worry about me worrying, because if there is understanding, there is less worry with it, because you know what's at hand, and then you would know how to deal with it. Not the survivor directly, but myself, in what I say, what I do, what I can provide, and so on. Understandably, it might not be my problem, so it's not my worry. That could be in the eyes of the survivor. I get that. And if that's out of maintaining a level of control for themselves, I respect that. But if there was ever a time, or there was a deep desire within them that they technically wanted to collapse or wanted to release or wanted to get all the thoughts out, to scream it out, I'd be welcoming of that within reason, you know? What else do we have? Beside code word for being busy, meaning other stuff, if a survivor said, it doesn't matter, that could be during deep talk, it could be a moment of truth showing, a small conversation, some kind of disagreement, some kind of truth peeking through. It could be about day, it could be about life, it could be about the past. It could be about something that they did or something that they didn't do. And then they say, it doesn't matter. To me, it does matter. You matter to me in that situation. You shouldn't have to suffer in silence for that. And my thoughts, opinion is, when a survivor says it doesn't matter, what they actually mean inside is, it does matter. I want to share it with you, but I don't have the mental capacity or the energy to talk about it just yet. Maybe another time. Or, it does matter, but I don't want to share it with you because I'm scared of how you'll react. All I can say to that, and like with some of the other points above, a person's dark past where they did things which they didn't want to do, did things because they were forced to, along the lines of that. Put in difficult positions, a rock and a hard place. That's not their fault. It wasn't directly their choice. I wouldn't think less of them for that. Okay? And other areas too, providing there is a backstory, so there is that understanding, there can be a way through. Oversharing, if a person overshares, there is still a way through. If they feel guilt or shame, to me, there is still a way through. To look beyond, to work past it, but together and not separately. To make sure we're both on the same page, at the same level, the same pace, the same understanding, and the same level. I don't want to be on a higher level and them below me. I don't want to be below them and them above me. I want to be on the same level so I can see them eye to eye and move forwards. I don't want to stand behind someone. I don't want to stand in front of them and they follow. I want to stand by their side with the current, the past, and the future problems, the hell, the bad people ahead and behind, to face it together. That's what I would wish for, or hope that the survivor may want as well. But understandably, that might be a long way off because it seems too risky. But referring back to the "it doesn't matter" line, when that happens, it does matter. But I myself, may seem as a contradiction, wouldn't want to push it. I get that it does matter, but I also get that maybe it's not the right time. It'll be the right time when you say it is. But there might be moments where there needs to be a gentle prompt. If the survivor can't express, I might have to ask or ask again. But I don't want to be pushy either. There's a fine line when it comes to that. Wanting to know what's wrong or wanting to know what's up, valuing them, I value the survivor's opinion, the survivor's thoughts and what may be hidden, but I also respect their boundaries as well. It's like a tightrope, balancing the fine lines between their privacy, but also what they may need to release. Just like how it's a tightrope within their own mind, wanting to retain that control, which they may have lost in the past, and the trust, not wanting it to be taken or tarnished or hurt, but also wanting to get closer to someone. We're doing it in different ways, but our general aim is to come together at some point. That would make sense. So yeah, the code words can mean other things, but the survivor may be reluctant to say what's really happening in life, daily or in the moment. I respect that. Now, speaking of levels, the pedestal effect. A survivor, a person, and I'm not describing myself directly because that would be biased and narcissistic, but like, just as a scenario, if a survivor saw me as healthy, whether that be physically, appearance, mentally, having common sense, supposedly being intelligent, smart, those type of compliments can carry weight and value. Me, appreciative of, but to them, the more they praise me, the less they may feel of themselves. It's like inflating a balloon, a helium balloon. The more, or a hot air balloon, the more you inflate it, the survivor is on the outside of the basket of the hot air balloon. Metaphorically speaking, as a symbolism, okay? Every time the survivor compliments the other partner with positive words and praise, and it's meant, that's most important, every compliment the survivor gives to the other partner is another pump of air into the hot air balloon. The more compliments, the more the balloon inflates and fills with air, the air being compliments. But what happens when a hot air balloon inflates and reaches the maximum with the machinery? It then takes off. But if the survivor is on the outside of the basket giving the compliments, the hot air balloon expands and eventually ascends into the sky, leaving the survivor behind. I am almost the hot air balloon. I've received the compliments I appreciate. It's nice of them to think of me in that way. But for that ride and that journey, it's done alone because they're left behind. Indirectly, they've left themselves behind because they put me so high on a pedestal through their meaningful compliments that they now feel that they can't match up to and they can't be like me. And if they feel like they can't be like me, they may feel unworthy. And if they feel unworthy, they may feel that disconnect or that inability to get closer to me because they don't feel that they deserve it. It can be quite deafening, as in the feelings and sensations with that situation. As much as I appreciate the compliments and words, and I would have that belief that what the survivor says to me is what they mean deep down within their heart, because it's big and it's strong, despite it feeling fragile or maybe broken with time. I would take compliments from a survivor as a great level of importance to myself, because they have been to hell and back. They know what's good and what's bad. They've been, or possibly been, badly treated, and they've come out of the other side and still praise others and still see the best in others. Even if I feel confident that I'm a good person in life, I'm a nice person, I'm a very patient person, and I'm confident in that at least, that I would still take it with high praise from a survivor praising me, because they've been through a lot and yet they still find a way to see the light even in me, which is massive. That says a lot about them as in strength, as in the survivor. But I personally would never want a survivor, the other half, to feel less or below me. I'd hope or wish that they could be beside me for that closeness, for that to avoid the silence, to just be on the same wavelength mentally and physically, because they deserve to be, and they deserve to be by my side. I mean, paradoxically, or the reverse way, my thoughts, my opinion, this is just a quote, okay? Just so you know, it's just a quote that I made up in my mind with time. People always say in life, never put someone upon a pedestal, because either you may not live up to them, so you put yourself down, or they may not live up to those expectations that you've given by compliments, so then you're let down. But why should anyone be putting one on a pedestal when I would be putting someone on a throne, because they would be my queen by my side, and not someone to worship or look up to, but someone to be beside and move forwards with, in war and in peace, in chaos, through the storm, and when it's open and quiet. I wouldn't be putting anyone on a pedestal. I would be putting someone on a throne directly beside me. There is a difference. That's a quote to the resistance from people in this world who think they know better. But with respect to a survivor, they're not intentionally putting someone on a pedestal. They're not putting me intentionally on a pedestal so they sabotage themselves. But it's what subconsciously happens when they may see the positives within the other person. But then after, if they can't reciprocate, they may realise they're now a million miles away from that partner than what they were to begin with. So through exploring, experiencing, and picking up on the good traits within the other half, it's now created a distance that can't be reached, because the survivor can't reciprocate or reach the same levels. I understand that can create isolation, and it can create maybe self-frustration in a way. As I said, I would never want the other half, one's partner, to be in that place. I wouldn't want the survivor to feel less or in value or in intelligence, because what I might be good at, if they felt that they're not, there is definitely things that the survivor is good at that I could never be, okay? And I'm just going to give really brief example. I might do YouTube, I might talk a lot, I might analyze cases and mysteries and handle all of that and deal with the resistance too. A person could say you're really intelligent and smart for being able to do it, and so on. But what does the survivor do in life? There will be an area, there will be something, there will be a role, or there could be a job, whatever, what they engage in, what they do, their hobby and activity. What they do is something that I can't. If we're talking about intelligence, a person could say, I'm intelligent for what I do. But I could say to that survivor, who might be an artist, who might be a stylist, that might be something along that, or the empathy part in just simply communication and understanding other people based on what they've gone through in life. I would say that you are very intelligent creatively, as in what you create, what you make, what you style, what you provide for someone. That's something I could never do. Okay, there is a split, but we are intelligent in different ways, but we can combine that intelligence together and share those traits with one another to remove that isolation and gap. You know, I could say in a situation with a survivor, you may think of me as intelligent and smart and able to adapt and able to deal with tension and conflict and stress. But look at you. Look at how you are able to still try and see the best in people. How you can't take no for an answer when it comes to the weighing out unkindness, that all you can see, or more so what you try to see in a variety of people, is kindness, even if they don't treat you with kindness. That you, even back then with the past, you tried to look beyond the darkness with positivity in hopes that there could be change. You didn't give up on them when they gave up on you a long time ago. That requires an immense amount of strength, but also a massive amount of emotional intelligence, being able to look beyond and see the good in people. Whereas someone like me, who could be at times a little bit more colder, just the way things have gone for me, and a bit more restrictive, and maybe not as soft as other people are, that arguably maybe your heart is so much bigger than mine, within reason, or metaphorically, your heart is so big and it represents and reflects in your deep empathy towards other people, or your deep creativity when styling and creating for others and making them happy or satisfied. That requires physical effort, long focus in doing it, and maybe emotional, mental focus and energy used up. A lot going on. And it can even be on the basics as well, just with dealing with everything from the past still existing till this day. Might not feel strong, I get that, but it requires strength to even just open your eyes the next day, despite what's happened previous. That requires a lot of strength, which maybe I might not have, or maybe I've not gone through what the other person's gone through to even consider. Okay? So yeah, I might be good at some things, but you, the other half, to that survivor, they're likely very good at other stuff. What they do may differ to what I do, but surely it can complement one another when coming together. Whether that be sharing those skills, sharing those traits, okay? You know, like, without breaking the fourth wall, there'll be times, just in general, people on YouTube, in the live chat, how they appear welcoming and welcome other people in, and are always positive and supportive. And I might not have that same energy or that same intensity, that same bubbliness, because it's just not me, or just the way I am with everything, okay? But I would say, like, in those areas, you bring me up and be positive. I could say to yourself or to that survivor, that look at what you've done. You've been able to create a safe place for yourself, or you have been able to make other people feel safe by your own welcoming warmth. And that's massive. And what solidifies it on a much greater scale is the fact that to a survivor, everything what they've gone through in the past, everything bad and evil, what they faced, whilst the damage, the pain and the struggles have carried over, of course, it's not definitively changed who they are as a person. They may feel that their heart is gone. They may feel a part of them has died because of the past. They may feel a bit lost. They may feel other things. Yet based on their actions, based on their words, and based on their behaviour, it's not been lost. And okay, there might be moments where that bubbliness, that warmth, whilst it represents who they are, it might also be enhanced and supported by just wearing a mask. That if the mask was to be taken off, the bubbliness may not be there, the happiness may not be there to the same level. But that doesn't make them less of a person whatsoever, in my mind. Because even if you strip away the bubbles, you strip away the warmth, you strip away that outgoing behaviour, what's left of them? A real person with a massive heart, even if it's retrospective. What they did in the past, what they did in the past matters in a positive way, even towards darkness, looking beyond the darkness, giving everything. Even if it wasn't to me, if it's to someone in the past, it shows their strength, it shows how big their heart was and how it can still be now, even if it might not feel like it. So even when stripping away maybe certain layers of them, there is still a lot to them beside. And as for the pedestal effect or feeling unworthy, beside not being able to reciprocate immediately, there is no demand or expectation for that. In my opinion, little efforts or little attempts mean a lot and are more important than anything else. Just trying is what matters, whether that be the survivor trying to communicate or trying to help themselves or trying to look past the past, as difficult as it can be, as many steps backwards as it might be. It's the fact that they're trying, and that's what matters most. That's a positive within them. In a visual sense, if they ever put me on a pedestal, I would reach out and I would grab their hand and I would pull them up so they're on the same exact platform as me, because they deserve to be. They don't deserve to be below me. And in terms of intelligence, at least from my point of view, I can say what I think and the survivor can disagree and say, well, no, you are better, you are good, you are this. And it's meant, and I do appreciate it. But without conflict, without disrespecting or dismissing what they think and believe, what I would say, more so as a means of showing that I'm not perfect, is I don't always feel intelligent, and I may not always be perfect or do the perfect or the right things. In that sense, there can be mistakes along the way or misunderstandings. What's that about? Trying to sell myself in a negative light, trying to put myself down, or when I'm critical or hard on myself? No, it's just showing the raw, real self, because sometimes that can bridge the gap. If something is so perfect, the person may not want to touch it or ruin it. If a person knows that it can be touched and it can be valued and made the most of as in a person, then that's where the closeness is. The difference between dealing with an expensive designer bag and a simple backpack is one can be used more often and used what it's meant for. The other one is more a display piece. If a person is perceived as perfect, they become a display piece, which the survivor can only look at and appreciate and can't get any more from it. But if that person, despite being seen as perfect, if they showed their imperfections to that survivor, subconsciously it can make the survivor feel better about themselves if they've got their own struggles. In other words, I will have my strengths, but I will definitely have my weaknesses and limitations, and I would try or hope if at some point to be able to share that with the survivor so they know what's what and what's up. Whether it's the same weaknesses or limitations as them, whether it's less or worse, that's what I'd try and do. Providing there is respect both ways, that's what I'd try and do. Done, in my opinion, it would be done to get closer, but to also feel less isolated if there's an understanding between the strengths and the weaknesses and not having to deal with it alone, just like how with them, goes both ways, hand in hand. And also just to show that I'm not perfect, which I appreciate that they describe me as that, but just to say I'm not, so things can be more raw, more real, and more interaction without the fear of tarnishing or tainting it. Because beside a survivor, what would you call it, without meaning to do it, setting themselves up to putting a person on a pedestal, and then they feel less of a person and feel worse than they did before. Because of the not wanting to share how their day was, not wanting to share their past, not wanting to share or welcome personal details or the world to them, can also be created and linked to the pedestal. If they see something as amazing, perfect and clean and pure, they don't want their own darkness to affect or ruin the other person. And if they're dealing with feeling blame or survivor's guilt at the past, that might universally reinforce their behavior in the moment. They put someone on a pedestal, they're grateful, they appreciate, it's great. But then they also realize, because of that, I can't reach them anymore. So I've got to deal with it myself. And if I do try reaching out, I don't want to deflate them. I don't want to pull them down to my level. So that's what reinforces that behavior. Pedestal, they feel bad, they can't share, they're less likely to open up. Me though, more real, raw, show imperfections for that closeness, for that acceptance. I'm not lowering myself to their level. I'm not ruining or desecrating myself because of their darkness. I am elevating them to my level. Their darkness and their past deserves to be beside me, whether I am pure or not, whether I'm a great person or just a good person. They still deserve to be by my side, because from a friendship or a relationship, you should be on equal terms. There should be no feelings of inadequacy. But of course, there can be moments where not just them, but myself may feel, do I match up to them? That imperfection or that doubt within can level with them. With some of their struggles can be some of my struggles, in a sense. So there is a better understanding between two different people in that sense. A survivor may feel less alone when they know another person is dealing with the same struggle or a similar crossover. Not literally, because it's not about me taking away from what they have or what they've gone through, but it's about trying to level with them, as in understanding, or as in how I think at times, just like how they may think at times. Because if you can share something in common, then you can be on the same level. And the more you share in common, or the more you share in understanding, even if you have different pathways in life or past experience, more or less, with that understanding can bring closeness on the same level. I'd hope or wish for that survivor to be on my level, just like for me to be on their level. It's our level, not individual, you know? Can take time, of course, or in an activity or in a hobby or something that I do and they didn't quite understand, I would, within reason, tell them about it. Not talk at them, but talk with them, share with them and explain it. So then either they participate, they engage in the same thing that I do, or they just have a simple understanding. Understanding one another can be a bonding activity as well, psychologically speaking. But yeah, there is that. Now, in terms of getting help, whether that be therapy, whether that be some form of intervention, I would never want or demand for the survivor to get help, whilst it might be required, needed and necessary for the sake of themselves, for the sake of a possible relationship and for things to move forwards. Whilst yes, it might be advised and whilst it might be needed, and whilst some experts could say, well, one thing comes before the other, it comes down to the survivor's choice. The survivor's choice of when they get help, if they get help, if it's needed, and depending what type, and if they want to continue, such as a friendship or a relationship, whilst healing or recovery, as long as a form of communication is present. I would respect that, you know, as long as there's that communication, so one knows about the situation. If there was a time where a survivor subconsciously or decided to make the move in healing, whether that be through communication or it just happened. If by any chance a survivor got help or tried therapy again, if it didn't work previous, maybe they're doing it for themselves, or maybe they're doing it because they feel they need to or have to in order to make this relationship work, in order to get closer to me, in order to be able to be that supposed partner that they feel that I deserve. But what really matters, and in my opinion, what really matters, is they do what they need to do when they're ready, not when they feel they have to. Because they've already lived a life or moments in the past where they may have had to do stuff or perform or to please someone or to be the ideal partner or to be the ideal individual. But it shouldn't be what's idolized or what's worshipped. It should just be them being themselves and doing what they think's right and what they think's best without pressure, without being pushed. Because when someone's pushed, they can do stuff, but they may regret it after. Or when they feel pressure to pursue something, they may try, but then stop shortly after because they just didn't have the mental capacity, the energy for it. Can't rush someone into healing, can't force someone into recovery. As much as I may want to be with someone, what I may want or what I may wish for doesn't overshadow or doesn't take over their situation, even though it's their own personal struggle or their own personal healing, their situation matters more than what I may want in the moment, right? Even if the feelings within me naturally might be a wish for this, a wish for that, logically within, at some point upon reflection, it would be, yes, I might want this, but do they? Yes, I might wish for closeness or lack of arm's length, but are they ready? If they're not, my outlook would be, if I'm ready but they're not, it doesn't happen, or something doesn't happen. If they're ready but I'm not, it doesn't happen. But if I'm ready, they're ready, or trying, then there is a chance. But all I can say is, if a survivor ever tried getting help, even if they did it slightly rushed, but they wanted to or they felt the need to, I'd appreciate it that they tried, and appreciate it that if it was done in that circumstance, in the timing of a friendship or relationship forming, well then it shows how much that they value me, or how much they value the potential of this or a situation longer term. If it didn't work out, if the therapy didn't quite work or it wasn't quite the right time, a survivor may try and wear the mask by pretending it is working, or they are going, or they are attending, but maybe they're not, or maybe they stopped, or maybe they just don't have the strength today to be able to go. Would I think less? No. Would they be failing or disappointing me? Never. A survivor that tries is a survivor that never disappoints me. Okay? Because trying means caring, and caring is a positive trait, and if it's indirectly or directly done as a response to me, well, then what more can you ask for? All you can hope is that there is an effort or there is an attempt, successful or not. It's what counts. That's what matters. So, with that being said, what other areas is there? Arguments and ruminating thoughts. Like with any connection with anyone in this world, PTSD or not, there will be arguments, there will be disagreements, there will be misunderstandings, and it might be a tense standoff. Every situation is different, but obviously to a survivor, arguments can be triggering and can be stressful, depending. Now, if there was an argument or a misunderstanding, what I would hope for is that the survivor doesn't have to ruminate on those thoughts or hold them close and either torture themselves or play it through their mind over and over again, like how they might with a previous relationship, the loss of a previous partner, or past abuse, ruminating over and over, punishing themselves because they don't feel worthy or deserving of looking beyond their own thoughts and feelings, but also feeling like they can't move forwards until they find closure in this current moment or a previous argument. What I would hope or wish for is at some point, if a survivor was able to share their their disagreements, or if they were frustrated or unsettled by something, whether it be something that I've done or something indirect or accidental, if they could share it, that would be good. But of course they may not, because of the past. It may have taught them that they can't open, they can't share because it's too risky. But hopefully with that trust and that consistency with time, they'll be able to get their point across, because they don't deserve to suffer in silence, and they don't deserve to ruminate on thoughts and feelings of a current connection, which is historically, there's been an argument, which they may ruminate on or hold on to for days, weeks, or months. If they've got something to say or something building up within, they deserve and have every right to put their point across, because that individual, that survivor, in certain status would be my equal, even though, they might not feel it. They deserve to be my equal, and they should be. So if they've got thoughts or opinions or things to say, they should be able to say it, or hopefully they can at some point. Obviously in the past, maybe the opposite, because they were dismissed, they were neglected, they weren't accepted, so that could have taught them that they can't. But I'd hope to think that in the moment that they can, and they are allowed to. When I say allowed, I don't mean giving them permission in a controlling way. I just mean when they're ready, or if they feel that urge, in hopes that they're able, right? So the next one, visions of ex-partner, as in a flashback, as in an episode on the spot, as in them seeing me as their previous person, distorted, whether that be a sudden hallucination or a random thought, an intrusive thought comes out the mouth. Would I think any less? Would I react bad? No. And the simple aspect is, in the moment, the survivor is dealing with a lot. The mind is under attack. It's hard to think logically. It's hard to think clear when it's suffocating in the brain and suffocating with breathing. I don't expect a person to think functional when it's intense in the moment. It requires time to settle. The other factor is why I wouldn't think less or be disrespected or feel any frustration to a survivor that may get a sudden flashback of an ex, or bringing it up, or seeing me as that from the past, if it was intrusive, is because I know who I am and I know what I am capable of. I might not be confident and I might be very shy, but in terms of basic respect, I know, just in my own opinion, in my own world, not being narcissistic, I believe in myself that I am the best at what I do when it comes to showing basic respect. I am the best at what I do when it comes to building some kind of trust. I have a 100% trust feedback. I'm confident in my ability that I am the absolute best in this world when it comes to providing perspective, depth, understanding, and I have the patience of a god. Now that sounds very narcissistic, but that's just to show the situation of, might not be confident, might be very shy and very quiet, but the areas where I fail at, I play to my strengths elsewhere. It's just showing that introspection, right? That I'm not perfect, but in the eyes of someone else, I might be. But there are certain areas that I might shine at, right? The same way that the survivor would themselves in other areas, positively speaking. So just to put it in short, there are certain areas which I am confident in within myself, that if a survivor did have a moment or a low moment, whatever that may be, it wouldn't impact me because I know who I am. I don't have to worry about the past partner. I don't have to worry about that previous ex, because I know who I am, and so on. But I do understand the survivor may feel a bit lost in the moment because of dealing with an unearthed or an unprocessed trauma or struggle, which is understandable. It might take some time just to settle back down and calm. But beside that, what other aspects? Panic attacks. A panic attack can be rather intense and intrusive, invasive and unpredictable. If I was in the presence of a survivor who was having a panic attack, Would it put me off? No. What would it do? It would bring me closer, really wanting to make sure that they're okay. It would be, would you call it instinctive or just automatic in that sense? I would want to do everything possible, every breath, every ounce of stamina to make sure that they're okay and safe, whether that be privately or whether that be publicly. Even if I'm shy, even if I'm quiet, I will have my alternative ways to pick up or to de-escalate a situation in my own unique way, in hopes that the survivor is okay. So, in a relationship or maybe even a friend, but more a relationship just for that depth, and it's easier to explain basically. If out somewhere in public in a busy place or at some kind of party or get together, I'm with them there in the moment, and then maybe suddenly because of noise, because of a trigger about, music playing, there's a scent in the air, there is something sensory, something visual, auditory, which triggers something within the survivor, the partner, who gets a bit tense, feels the chest tighten up, hard to breathe, hard to think, heart beating fast, mind racing, maybe sweating in the hands, maybe feeling a bit breathless, feeling a bit lightheaded, feeling like the walls are closing in. It can be quite a scary moment, feeling like a person might die or might have a heart attack, maybe. If I was in that position, providing I was present with the partner, with the survivor, what would I do? Because of my vision, because of my depth, because of what I can pick up on and see within humans, which many other humans can't at times, I'd look for eye contact, I'd look for fingers movement, I'd look for foot placement. If their feet were pointing in different directions, the body language is they need to be elsewhere. If their hands or arms are crossed, they're holding something back, they're holding something within. If their biceps, if their legs, if fingers tense or look restricted, or if the temple pulsates, if the jaw is clenched, it shows that they're holding on, trying to resist that urge of breaking or panicking. If they're scanning the room frantically, if the eye movement is just a little bit more rapid than usual, if their mouth is half open, if there's the slight ounce of breathlessness, I would pick up on that or sense it within reason, okay? Picking up on the body language in a non-invasive way, picking up on the non-verbal communication to know if they're safe or not, and if they're not, to be able to go up to them and whisper in their ear very discreetly without the whole world knowing, being able to take them away or take them somewhere quiet, to find a safe place, not to run away, never, but a tactical retreat, building that bubble in the moment, building that bubble where it's just me and them and everyone else is irrelevant. No disrespect to the other humans out there, but just being able to focus and zone back in. No harm in taking time out. Can be done in many different ways. If you were shopping or in a busy center, or as Americans would say, in a mall, in the presence of the other person, if they feel tense, feel a bit tight, verbal communication, a whisper in the air, or non-verbal, they need to get out, they need some time, they need to get away, that's what happens. Whether that be shopping, whether that be in a restaurant, whether that be in a bar, whether that be, I don't know, at a football match, wherever, if they need to go, they need to go. But they don't go alone, I go with them. Unless they need quiet time by themselves, that's understandable. But it's that aspect of, when you're there with someone, you don't just support them in the positive moments, you support them during the downfall, during the messy moment, or that's at least what I would think in. So they need to get away, they need some time out, and providing they want, I'll be there beside them. They shouldn't have to deal with it alone. They've already done that in the past. It should be different now. It should be, or it could be, shared now or at times and certain moments when it's appropriate. You know? And like even in a busy situation, it's not a matter of shouting or letting the whole world know, oh, this is what's going on. You just gently whisper into the survivor's ear and say, do you want to get away? Do you want to move elsewhere? And in my situation, because of the equipment that I have through the voice, vocal cords, sound effects, the sound of a beating heart can regulate a person's nervous system in somatic ways and re-regulating their emotions and stability. The feeling of a heart is pure and real, and if it's the other person's, it brings safety, closure, and a grounding effect, pulling them out of that panic and reminding them of where they are and who they're with. I have the ability to do that heartbeat sound and to lower a person's stress levels and to even slow down a person's heart. As a demonstration, it would be and so on. And it might sound better when closer to the screen or closer to the person's ear, but that's what can be done or demonstrated. The sound of a cat purring, where it's like, along the lines of that. An actual cat purr, the hertz, the frequency is what can calm the nervous system down of a person that may be panicking. I'm able to do that. So it's like in alternative, unusual, but creative ways that can go a long way, can have a profound effect positively on a survivor in a situation where a person was struggling, a person who I knew, a person who I was close to or with more so. That's what I could do within reason, if that's what they wanted, of course. It's about making sure that they're safe because they deserve to be safe, and to be able to get away from all the noise. If they want to shut the world out, we can shut the world out. If they need to shut the world out individually, then if that's what's needed, if that's what's best, then I understand. Okay? Now, beside panic attacks, fantasy as in talking about stories, talking about deep stuff, talking about ideas, talking about scenarios and situations. Fantasy can always be done in different ways, verbally, physically, whatever it might be. But in my eyes, when it comes to fantasy, I'm always cautious, as in, is the fantasy what they really want? Or is it fantasy as in escapism from the past? Is it fantasy as in recreating the past to control the narrative in the present, something that they may have not controlled back then? From my point of view, it would be just making sure what they suggest, what they say, or ideas is what they really want and not what they feel they need to do to please the other person or feel like that they need to do because there's no other way. Crossing over partially with people pleasing as a defense mechanism, a form of survival. I'd hope and wish that a survivor doesn't have to people please me, that whatever they do because they want to, and they just want to, without feeling pressured or forced, just in communication, just in suggestions and ideas or activities or something to do or somewhere to go, you know? Fantasies can be seen as dodgy, but they don't have to be. Fantasies can be anything. Fantasies are basically thoughts and ideas within the mind which can become reality, regardless of what it is. It's just about going at a steady pace, making sure, are they okay? Are they ready? Is that what they want? Is that what's agreed upon both ways, within reason, body language as well, in a non-invasive way? If it did come to people pleasing, what I would do, without making it clear, for it to be obviously natural, is if a person was overly apologetic when they didn't have to be and they said that they were going to make it up to me, I would suggest delaying it by an hour, delaying it by a day, not to deny them, not to reject them, but to allow them that space and time to reflect and what they really want in the moment, what they really want to do, what they really want from a friendship or a relationship without feeling pressured and without me coming across as cold or dismissive. It is a balancing act. It's got to be done in an appropriate way and in such a way that the other person doesn't know. Not to be deceiving, but to keep it natural. It's difficult to explain, but hopefully it makes sense. Giving them the time and the space to respect themselves and to do what they feel that they want and what they're most comfortable with without anything being rushed. The same way as healing. Giving that time and space. When the time is right, good. When the time isn't, it doesn't have to happen. Now, brain fog. If there's ever a time where a survivor got brain fog as a trauma response, as a means of dealing with overwhelming thoughts of a lot going on in the moment or being put on the spot to make a decision, to ask a question through communication in different ways, I get that. A lot to say, but not enough to express out the mouth. A lot said before and after, but not at the time, because the brain shuts down to protect itself from oncoming potential threats of having to give an answer when they might not be ready, or they might not know what to say, or worry if they make a decision it might be the wrong one. All I would say to that is, I don't demand or expect an answer immediately. A survivor can give their answer when they're able to, when they're ready, within reason. That a survivor doesn't have to make all the decisions themselves or feel the pressure to answer every question, that we can brainstorm together. We can find a middle ground together. I would hope that the survivor is able to have a time where they can think, and it doesn't have to be in the moment. As in, if there was a question, if there was a suggestion, and if their brain turned into fog, all I would say to the survivor is, it's okay. Let me know if you do think of anything. There's no rush. Really, there is no rush. When the person has time to think on their own terms, at their own pace, they perform naturally, they perform better. When put in an unnatural position or put on the spot, performance anxiety kicks in and it overshadows their true potential and worth. When they're given the time to reflect and think, that's when it shines most. That's when their creativity, when their imagination will be best, when they're ready. And that's what matters most. Me receiving an answer immediately doesn't matter the same way as them getting the time to think it out and come up with a plan or come up with an idea. Their timing for their delivery is so much more important, in my opinion, right? There doesn't need to be an answer right now, maybe later. There doesn't need to be a decision or an ultimatum right now, but maybe later. Or maybe another time together to brainstorm, to reach a conclusion, to have an idea. And that can be simple. It can be, what drink do you want? What food do you want? Should we get this? Should we buy that? Should we do this? Should we go there? It can be small scale, it can be big scale, but each decision made individually and together is very important in building the foundations and onwards, because likely there was a time in the past where the survivor didn't get that same freedom and didn't get to make those important decisions, even on small scale. They were denied of it by the past. There is a time and place for everything, or at least that's what I think. Now, moving on to some of the more important areas, some of the more deeper areas when it comes to a survivor, PTSD, complex PTSD, trauma responses, nightmares. Depending on the arm's length and the timing or situation, nightmares don't scare me as in the survivor dealing with them. It can allow me to work it out. Not that I'm an expert. There was a time in the past, random, in 2016, there was a person who I was friends with online from America, Virginia. They had a nightmare or a dream about something, and then broke it down bit by bit, and I found a symbolism for every piece of that nightmare and story which resembled a part of their life or something that they've gone through or currently going through in a natural way. And they said, yeah, it seems accurate. So there is that ability as well besides other stuff. But if there was a nightmare, I wouldn't want the survivor to feel that they have to hide it from me physically, or like from afar, as in verbal communication. Yeah, the nightmare may not be pretty. The nightmare may be messy. It could be rough. It could be very difficult. Providing they're able and they want to, and they've got the strength, of course, I'd appreciate it'd be good if they could share it. Not for it to be fixed, but just for it to be understood, and just to eliminate areas of isolation. The more they can open up without the consequences, the less isolated they may feel. If someone truly gets them, if someone truly accepts them. Understandably, a survivor can say, if you've not been through what I've been through, you won't understand it. That may be true. But the closest to actually getting to that level of understanding what it's like is by opening up and sharing eventually, to bridge that gap so it benefits both people or whatever. The nightmare aspect can be a response to the past. Ruminating thoughts, reliving the past to try and get closure to something that they didn't get before, so they can close that door and move on. But what if, at times, those nightmares, those night terrors, instead of rejecting or suppressing them, they're welcomed and understood by the other person and partner? Whether they can figure it out or find the answers or provide more so the perspective, so the survivor can get the answers that they want. Because it's about the survivor finding themselves, returning back to who they are, what made them them, or finding a different version of themselves, rebuilding their own heart on their own terms with the support of the partner. But it's their struggle, their journey, and how they heal, how they recover, and the actions that they take are on their terms specifically. So it can be the same with nightmares. But I would hope that they could share the nightmares with me, so they don't have to live an actual nightmare alone. Let me walk through the fire. Let me be a part of your storm so we can weather it together. I said, I can't speak for everyone, but I would have that depth. I would have that stamina. My stamina to a survivor, providing it's the right person for me, providing I get on with them, of course, common sense. But based on those parameters, right? If I was, or if I have, or if I was in that position, my stamina, my depth to the survivor would be unyielding, undying, unparalleled, unrivaled to anyone else out there, because of the importance of them to me and vice versa. And their darkness. Their darkness is just as important as themselves. The darkness doesn't have to define them for the future, but in the moment, what they're going through and how they struggle, the darkness is important because that's what's causing the distress. That's why it's important to look at it and to work it out in some way for then the next step ahead. And nightmares can be a core element of the past, reliving it, unprocessed trauma. Being able to ever find a place to share, I'd appreciate a lot. And as well, it would allow progression in some way, slow baby steps, for example, in getting answers or providing perspective, allowing them to know more on what to do next. Now, in terms of triggers, just in terms of PTSD or complex, if I was in a position of knowing someone with trauma and all of that, I would want at some point to be able to learn from the survivor. Whilst the survivor may put me on a pedestal and think I don't need to learn anything because I'm perfect at everything, I could be out of my depth, or I have a lot of learning to do from the survivor, as in what makes them them, what triggers them, and what not to do. Not walking on eggshells, but being able to walk comfortably, and also to be able to respect their boundaries. That's why it's important to me understanding the triggers so I know what to do and what not to do. Like talking, not raising my voice, not slamming my hand down, not punching a wall, avoiding that and dealing with it in other ways so they're comfortable and safe. And when it comes to disagreements, not telling them but talking with them. When it comes to closeness, respecting their boundaries but also understanding when they're ready, and so on. Not breaching anything and not interfering, not interrogating certain triggers, or like learning not to correct them because that's what they may have felt in the past and it was done as a weapon by a bad person to make them feel small or to make them feel stupid. I wouldn't want to be responsible for that. Of course, can't be perfect. Mistakes will be made. That's what makes it real. That's what makes it natural. Of course, to a survivor, it may not be pleasant, the triggers, but it's just how it is in life. You can't expect to walk on eggshells all the time, both ways. You can't expect to be perfect always. There are going to be moments, there's going to be mistakes, there will still be arguments or disagreements because that's what any normal, healthy friendship or relationship will be. If it wasn't, then it's not healthy, it's not normal. Sounds a bit contradictory, but it's just how it is. And even if there was a disagreement, even if there was a trigger, even if there was an accident, if that relationship is meant to be and important, not just from my point of view, but subconsciously or deep down important to them, should be able to look past it and move on and forwards instead of disconnecting and then that's it. There should be not a demand, you can't demand, but at some point there should be a fight for what's present if it's that important to you, and vice versa, or trying or attempting to figure it out. Now, besides triggers, OCD rituals, what they do, how they behave, how they perform, what they get up to. Double checking, overdoing, overthinking, respecting that. I overthink myself. At least at a young age, it was described that I had OCD, but that supposedly went away. But regardless, just anyone can overthink in life. People with OCD will be on a more repetitive scale where more time is consumed physically and emotionally, and doubt as well. Did I check this? Did I check that? Did I lock the door? I need to check again. I need to wash over and over again. I need to change the towels. I need to change the bed sheeting more often than usual. I need to brush my teeth more times in a day for many different reasons. But sometimes the core reason behind OCD, especially with trauma and a survivor, they're trying to gain back a form of control because it's something that they lost in the past. And by regaining back that control, it might be done in a compulsive or irrational way. And the thoughts and motives behind it is, if I stick with this routine, even if it is tiring, it's something that I can do, something that I can control. If I don't do it, I'll panic and I'll feel I'm losing control. If I'm in that position with a survivor, I would never want to disrupt their routine or their ritual. I would never want to take something from them, which would mean them losing control. If possible, if there was ever a time, if they could invite me into their world, I would be willing or want to learn their routine, not repeating it over and over again, but to mirror what they do, or even if it's just attempt or one-time thing, just to show that willingness, but also that naturalness, as in to share something, but not to overstep the boundary in a way. But then at times to remind them with perspective that, okay, maybe something wasn't done, but are you safe? Yes or no? And maybe to complement that if a person didn't fulfill a routine or there was disruptance in life, and if it led to a panic attack, with what I can do, calming the panic attack, providing the perspective to allow the survivor to have that moment to reflect and think without the fear and without the pressure, and to look back. Not that it will fix the OCD, but it can help regulate it just a little bit here and there. But ultimately, the OCD, the rituals within their house, within life, within certain places, to respect it, that's what I would want to do, because I wouldn't want to take any power from them or make them feel uncomfortable in that sense. And that might sound like common sense, but it's just me laying it out as in the different areas, the struggles, the trauma responses, and what I think about it and how I would act around it. Okay? They have their methods, they have their ways, and that's understandable. If there was a way to integrate it or to share, that would be good. That would be appreciative. Now, beside OCD, as important a series it is, I mean, just an example, let's say me, them, out somewhere. They worry or think, did I lock the door? Halfway to somewhere, on the way out, on a journey, exploring, travelling, whatever that is, local or afar. They do that sudden feeling or urge of having to check, having to double check within reason, then heading back and checking. Not that I go on and I leave them behind, but if they go, I go too. Same wavelength, same equality. But I don't influence their thoughts in to check or to avoid, to let them do what they think's best. When I say allow, I don't mean it in a controlling way, but to keep it natural, as in, if it's for peace of mind, to check if the door's locked. If it's for peace of mind, to make sure something was collected or posted or something previous. If that means turning back, it means turning back. No regret, no frustration, just understanding. Because that's survivor. Understandably, it's important to them that they have that routine or they're reassured. So they've got that control and that stability. It could be easy for me to say, it'll be okay, don't worry. But offering that reassurance may not be enough, and it might be disrespectful to them based on what they see as important. And as well, not telling them that they have to check, not telling them that they should go back, because if I was to do that, it will only confirm in their mind that their OCD is real, and it doubles down on their repetition. Whether they have a flare-up or they ease off, just to be supportive and to listen to them, and that's it. And if they make the decision and the final decision, to respect that, to not influence them. Because it's kind of like, it's their struggle, their moment, but it's a shared journey. To be by their side whilst they check or do something without interfering, without taking over, without impacting their decision making. They do what they need to do and what works best. But one is present there for the support and the presence in case anything went wrong, within reason. Now, more complex side, if a survivor, possibly with complex PTSD or just PTSD, they may have that deep fear of not wanting to be abandoned, which is understandable. I don't think anyone wants to be abandoned in a sense. The feeling of not wanting the other half to give up on them, even when things get tough, difficult, even when they have low moments or episodes, even if they have it in their mind that they know that they're hard work and they carry a lot of excess baggage, and even if they have it in their mind that they're a burden, they still don't want to be given up on by the other partner. As hard and tiring and draining as it might be for the survivor, they just hope that the other partner can see beyond that and see the positive still, and still have that love and respect. And that's what I would hope to, show myself to the survivor. Because the thing is, in terms of the aspect of giving up on someone, well, if you've come this far, then why give up? As like an inner, or what do you call it? A rhetorical question as to like myself. Why would I give up on the best person I've come across in life? Why would I give up on someone that accepted me for my strengths and weaknesses and limitation? Why would I give up on someone regardless of their darkness when they never looked down at me? You know what I'm saying? When those areas are ticked, the not giving up on them is unrivaled, unyielding, undying. That hunger and that thirst is undying for them. That's how it would be. I wouldn't just walk away like that. But I understand that fear within the survivor, not wanting to be given up on, because that's something that's happened in the past in different ways. It could be even beside PTSD, it could be a health issue, a health struggle, where they've had to take time out, take time off work, or slow down a bit, whether they wanted to or not, and they needed support, or they needed someone there when they needed it most, whether that be during treatment, whether that be during surgery, during an operation, during checkups or appointments, even if it's small scale or big scale, just having someone by their side to say it'll be okay within reason, but they never got that. Or the first sight of danger, the first sight of something getting tough, the other partner just walked away, ran away. Whether they apologised later or not, the damage was done. And obviously the survivor would have felt rejected, undervalued and neglected, and that can have its own long-term impacts. In a position, if in a situation a survivor didn't want to be given up on, or had a low moment, or had a health problem, I wouldn't want to just give up. I wouldn't want to, because that's not what I normally do either. And even if I can be helpful or so, and it's selective as in to certain people and not everyone in this world, I said, when it's a key person or an important person or someone who I think highly of, the giving up aspect isn't really in the vocabulary there, technically speaking. So there's that. But the feeling broken part, that's the thing. A survivor may feel broken. You know what I think? You know what I see within that survivor? I don't see a broken person. I see an individual that has simply gone through an unimaginable, extremely difficult time, or multiple occasions of that. They went through stuff they did not ask for and wasn't in control of. And they came out the other end, maybe hurt, damaged, and still struggling. But I don't see them as broken. I would never see them as broken. I respect that they may think that about themselves, but my personal opinion is, if they have nightmares, they're not broken to me. If they have ruminating thoughts, they're not broken to me. If they have panic attacks, they're not broken to me. If they have OCD or routines or rituals, they're not broken to me. If they have survivor's guilt, they're not broken to me. Because everything that they display and struggle is just because of the past. It's a response, either a trauma response to protect themselves or a trauma response to try and get the closure, what they need and want, and they're struggling to get. They're not broken. They're a normal person trying to get answers. They're a normal person trying to find their way through life to heal. There's nothing wrong with that. So that's my thoughts there. Now, when it comes to health, that could be a burden part too. And it could be anything health related. It could be an illness, it could be a cold, but it could be magnified by the immune system being lowered. Or it could be magnified by overworking as a means of escapism because of a trauma response. Low immune system or weaker immune system, overworking, overbusy, around more people, and possible illnesses being contracted. It's understandable. It's unfortunate, of course it is. And I wouldn't want the survivor to get ill, and I would hope that they could take time for themselves and put themselves first, or put us first without being too demanding, you know? But in terms of health, if it was a bit more serious, if it was a bit more long term, that shouldn't define who they are. That their health issues, or at times their health struggles, doesn't take away the heart and the big heart that they have within. That their breathlessness at times doesn't take away the smile from their face, or the way their eyes may flicker at me. That might start to sound a bit cringe, that, but you get the idea. And in terms of health, in terms of feeling broken, in terms of that weight that they may have over them, which they don't want to lump onto me, at the end of the day, just whether it can actually happen or not, just that process of treat those the way you would want to be treated. So if they're struggling, or if something's gone wrong, or there's health issue, I'm there for them without demanding, but just hoping, as said, it's a normal response that could be reciprocated or attempted at some point. Not demanded, but just a hope, right? It's not about putting the pressure on the other person to perform, because that's counterproductive, but it's just being honest in general without lying. And as well, what is worse, carrying the weight or being present with a survivor that deals with health issues or breathing issues at the point or moments and feeling like a burden, that or carrying the weight of what's more important, the weight of their heart, the weight of their naturalness, the weight of what makes them them and different to everyone else, in which the weight is positive and it outweighs the darkness, despite how they may feel at times. There's that to take on board. And like with a scenario, if they were dealing with health issues, that doesn't have to limit or restrict everything. Maybe some things can't be done. That's not a problem. There can always be an alternative way, or there can be a different option. Can't travel too far, can't walk too far, that's okay. There can be alternatives. Things can still be done, or even smaller scale stuff can be. If one or people were to travel and there was limitations there, would that be, I don't know, asthma or maybe lungs? Provided it's not too severe, of course. To a survivor, they may feel that dread and fear that they can't open or get too close because they don't want to drag the healthier person down. Shouldn't have to be a competition then, because the health that type of health shouldn't be the measure of a relationship, because that's what would make it hollow. That a person would only be there for you if you're healthy. A person would only be there for you at your good moments, your best moments. In my eyes, if a person can't be there for another person, or if a person can't be there for a survivor at their lowest, they don't deserve to be there with them at their highest. Be there both good and bad for that full balance and full circle. It's not always going to be perfect, but not many things are perfect if it's natural and real. So yeah. And if in a situation where you were out somewhere or there needed to be time out, they got tired, they got fatigued, they were breathless, slow down, no problem, all under control. And kind of jokingly, but technically it's true, the strength that I have, providing it's the opposite gender, and it would be, but I do have the ability to carry a human. Within reason, of course, because of the strength that I possess. I do have quite a bit of strength. Not that I carry people a lot, but I am capable. It's lightheartedness, but it's a lighthearted action which could have a profound, deep effect positively on, such as a survivor, or a survivor with dealing additional health-related issues, being able to carry them, carry their weight, carry their struggles, even if it's just for a moment, so they can catch their breath. Metaphorically, symbolism, and literally, that can be done. Or just being present beside them when they need it most. So that's what can be done. That's what I would think is important, and so on. Or just random situations, as if they were too tired to move in a moment. They shouldn't have to feel bad about it. The other person can step up when needed, and so on. It's not, what do people say, a labour of love. Well, love doesn't have to be work. It doesn't have to be hard work. It doesn't have to be any work when it's natural and it's meaningful. There's no hard work behind it. Just like how, in some cases, if a person may have had a job, but they don't feel or see it as a job because it's either so effortless to do or they enjoy what they do. So it's less work, but more enjoyment, but still done professionally. The same way, I guess, as a relationship and in the presence of a survivor. As hard, as dark as it can be, it doesn't have to be hard work if it's meant to be and natural. So there's that. Now, in terms of survivor's guilt, bringing that back up once again, the struggles are real, the past is real. But them feeling, the survivor, they can't move on or they can't get closer, such as with me, do I see that as disrespectful? No. It's a shame, of course. It can pull within the body, but they're dealing with a strong, difficult, complex situation, so I get that. And it says more about them in a positive light than their former partner, because they still consider other people's feelings, whether they're here or not, whether they've done good or bad. The survivor still considers other people's feelings, which is a big positive to have, but that survivor is deserving of being able to move on. Gentle prompts without forceful nature. Just that perspective of, to a survivor with survivor's guilt, if that former partner really meant something to you and they were supposedly good, well then they would want the best for you and for you to be happy regardless. Though, if there was darkness within them and they did what they did, or they just didn't want you to be happy and move on in life, maybe you owe it to yourself that you do what makes you happy or follow your desires, because you've already given enough, done enough for them. You don't need to give, or they don't deserve to have any more of your presence or breath, just in general. So there is that. But the deeper level of survivor's guilt, besides the guilt part, they've survived. If I was in the presence of a survivor, like I said earlier about not compare myself or feeling threatened by the past in a way, the other perspective is, if I was in the presence of a survivor or with one, I am not here to replace the past. I'm not here to overshadow the past. I'm not here to take away what you had with someone previously. This is a new chapter. It does not compare to back then. Positive or negative back then. What's happened has happened. Okay, with respect. But now things are in a different situation or place. Being able to move forwards when possible and do things different without it being compared to the past. The dark past may dictate what happens next if it's similar, but if it's different and new things are experienced, new things can't be tarnished by the past evilness because it can't hold any comparisons because it's never been done or experienced before. That's what matters. But I'm not here to take over. I wouldn't be here in my mind to take away from what they experienced in life or what they did in life before. It's just a different time in life. It's not pulling them away from it. It's not, none of that. They move with the motion when they can and if they want, providing there is clear communication to know what's up and what happens, right? Toxic family, very difficult. Toxic family that may trigger or remind the survivor of the past or a previous partner. Toxic family members that may hold a candle to a previous ex and neglect what the survivor went through. I've done a video going on about that in depth. It is in the playlist up there if you want to check it out. But my perspective of a survivor with a toxic family or certain family members, I understand it could be very difficult for them to introduce me to other people or for the survivor to talk about me to other people, hence why it leads to compartmentalization, being boxed in a separate box away from everyone else, to avoid that tension, to avoid that conflict, because for a survivor, conflict, tension, questioning can be triggering, not wanting to have to deal with that, but making the difficult decision to avoid badness also means sacrificing closeness with a new person and sacrificing that new partner in being able to be welcomed properly. What happens? What happens next? It does come down to what the survivor ultimately wants, what they really want. But all I can say from my perspective, whether I had to defend myself or defend the other person, let's just give just a bit of a general scenario, okay? Imagine it's YouTube, comment section, resistance, people attacking me, people questioning me, the odd person getting in between me and someone else as a scenario. What do I do about it? Well, I defend myself when there's a time, when I'm able, when there's that energy within to be able to do it and a purpose most definitely to unlock it. I will defend myself when needed, and I will defend myself against cretins, and I will defend myself against impetuous humans that ever question my ability in different areas when possible, without raising the voice or swearing, because of respecting the wishes of the survivor that's caught in the middle of it all. It's not fair for them either. But I would also defend the survivor, speaking not on behalf of them, disallowing them of talking and having their own thoughts, but just as a scenario, defending them. It would be my words towards a survivor and their family, if toxic, would be just a scenario, okay? excuse me, do you know or do you have evidence of what you say about me? I don't think so. If you don't know and you're clueless, don't be jumping the gun. There is more to it. There needs to be depth and understanding. That your own, as in the survivor, you seem to hold them back or remind them of the past. Have you never considered that a person is allowed to move on regardless? That person is allowed to be happy for once in a while, whilst you chain them back. They're allowed to do their own thing and make their own decisions. The way you're behaving, you're actually imitating the behaviour of that former partner. Is that something what you want to be? Is that something what you want to do? Do you pride yourself in such a way? You think highly of yourself because I'm seeing the darkness within you and my disappointment beyond you, as in the parents or a relative or, I don't know, an aunt or something. My disappointment beyond you is beyond immeasurable. Whereas you might be related to that said person and I'm an outsider. First of all, don't you dare question me. Second of all, don't be acting impetuous. And thirdly, don't be controlling them when they've already been through enough hell already. You haven't. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you've turned a blind eye. Maybe you were blinded by that masking, that love bombing in the past, by that other half, that used that psychological effect of trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. They pulled the wool over your eyes, but they may have not with some. Okay? Everyone has different opinions and perspectives. So either respect the opinions and perspectives and the alternative choices, or just simmer down and know your place and role. Okay? You understand me? So maybe that's a little bit too comfortable, that my response, but you get the idea. Because it's trying to be not emotionally biased and not taking it away from what the survivor wants in the conflict, and they want peace, silence. I don't want to add to their problems. At the same time, I want to defend them, because obviously if I knew of someone or a survivor close to me, I would want to defend them when necessary or when possible and when able. It's a balancing act once again, but if there are any, this is a selfish way of talking right now, just for clarity, but if there was another human or people out there partially responsible, them denying me the ability to be with someone, that would piss me off beyond, okay? Not the survivor, that doesn't piss me off, but the connections or the other people out there that put a rock in a hard place for the survivor, puts them in a very difficult position. They're dealing with wanting, or possibly wanting progress with me, but then also trying to keep their family or whoever happy or stable to avoid the conflict so there's no triggers, but then also the fear of letting me down or disappointing me, It's not fair for the survivor. That's what creates that frustration. It's a bit selfish, but it's just being honest. At the end of the day, the survivor can make their own choices, can do their own thing. They shouldn't be held back by the past. They shouldn't be held back by survivor's guilt, but understandably it is hard. But they definitely shouldn't be held back by the living of the people about. Because, like I said, if a previous partner that's passed away, if they're really a good person and was a good partner, they would want the best for the survivor to move on in life and be happy. Well, if the survivor's parents or family or extended family, whatever it is, who pride themselves and care so much about that survivor, their own, their daughter, their niece, whatever you call it, family tree, okay? If they care so much about that said person, then why are you restricting where they go, what they do? Why are you reminding and torturing them and holding a candle to the past? Seems like quite the contradiction, more like two-faced, hypocritical, typical behaviour, which is cancerous and disease-ridden, okay? So there is that. Now, beside that, low episodes, moments of silence, moments of recharging, going into freezing, can be difficult, can be challenging, and without closure or knowledge before it can be a hard time. As I said earlier, closure or understanding brings about peace and patience. Without, it can be difficult, it can hurt. But this isn't a way of punishing the other person when they're already dealing with struggles. It's just about being honest. It can hurt a lot, but that's the positive. When it hurts, it's a positive. When there's silence, when there's distance, when there is a moment, when it feels uncertain, it hurts, and that's positive because it shows a person cares. If you didn't hurt and you didn't feel much, then clearly it's not that important. There's not much to lose. You know, like what I said in a few videos previously back then, that whilst a survivor may feel dead inside or they've lost a part of themselves, in a new relationship, if they fear losing someone, it shows that they have value in their life and there is a bond and a connection that outweighs all the darkness. It might just be hidden. If a survivor truly was dead or didn't feel anything, then they wouldn't have any fear or any intimidation towards a new partner, because there would be no desire for that and no fear of losing it because there was nothing to have in the first place, right? So it's the same with a friendship or a relationship. If things part ways, break up, or on pause, or there is struggles and silence and trauma responses without the full knowledge, it can hurt. And that's just a true measure and test of how much one thinks of the other person and values them a lot. It's not punishment. It's not calling someone out. It's not being negative. It's being positive, as in, the reason why it hurts is because it matters and it's important so much. Just like how it is for a survivor that makes the biggest sacrifice in going into a deep freeze and shutting everyone out, not just to protect themselves, but to protect the people that they care about most, so their darkness doesn't pull anyone else down around them. They do it for their reasons, it hurts them. The other person deals with silence or whatever, it hurts them. It hurts each other in different ways because both people care about one another. That's what's most important and should never be forgotten about, even when everything feels impossible. If a person had a deep freeze in a scenario, worst case scenario, if I knew of a survivor that had a deep freeze, or supposedly that's what they did, and maybe, just maybe, it was a total system crash and collapse because of physical life, physical health, background noise, responsibilities, many different people or friends, and feeling that commitment level too much, but ultimately crashing where the body can't perform, can't function, the functional freeze, the masking can't work anymore or at that moment. So it's like retreating back into the home or wherever's most safe or closest to safety, and staying in hibernation, withdrawal, freezing up, clamming up for weeks or maybe months, sacrificing their own wants, needs and support, protecting themselves but protecting people around in their own way. Understandable. It really is. I understand that. But whilst that deep freeze is going on, the length of time it can go on for can build great levels of guilt and shame within the survivor. What have I done? Is there any coming back from it? Let's put me in that situation as a scenario. If I knew of someone who was in a deep freeze, a severe one, what do I think about it? Am I angry? Never. Not once would I ever be angry. If I knew or had an idea that a person is struggling or in a deep freeze or a severe, I would never be angry, because the way I see it, not for it to be misinterpreted, but it's justified. Their response and what they're going through. They're already going through enough hell already. They're already struggling more than enough. They don't deserve any more on top of it. And just with that understanding, there is simple understanding. As like with me, I get it. Needing time away, needing time to recharge, but also needing that time because it's out of one's control. It being overpowering, or the body collapses, or the mind, or both, and not much can be done. I understand, or in my mind, I feel that the survivor doesn't want to do that, but they can't control it. And for that and other reasons, I can't be angry, never. But would I feel or miss them? Absolutely. But that's normal. That's just another sign, and a true sign of how important that person is to me. And like any situation in life with other people out there who would have had encounters, not even to do with trauma or anything like that. So it's just putting it into perspective. It just shows that it's real, it's meaningful, and still there. That Even if a survivor had withdrawn and for quite some time, and they took drastic action to shut the whole world out, including me. At first, it might come across as a shock when dealing with it for the first time. It might take some time to process, of course, and the unknown and the possibilities of how long. It would be difficult, but that's just a normal human response to caring about someone so much, you know? And then going through the waves and just getting through the days day by day. That's like the scenario how it could play out. But still breathing, still getting on with stuff, and still doing what needs to be done, or at least trying. And just hoping within that survivor is okay or can become a bit better with time, and maybe be able to unfreeze, to not feel too much guilt, to not feel too much shame, and just to be able to reach out, because they're very important to me. You know, in that scenario, if that did happen, of course, because at times a deep freeze can't be controlled like a panic attack, and sometimes a deep freeze can be triggered by ongoing stuff in life, but also what's previously happened. And I guess it could also apply to previous events, and there's been a lack of recovery time, and anything else in between. It compiles, and when things compile, it can be a bit more overwhelming and demanding. The more demanding it is, the more wearing it is on the body and the mind. And like tying it in with the masking approach, hiding stuff or pretending to be perfect when it's not, that can add to the emotional or the energy toll, where it can lower. So the expectations of someone to be, recovered and bounce back isn't always possible, and I wouldn't expect that from a survivor. I wouldn't expect or demand a survivor to just come out of a freeze like that and be perfect. I expect it to be raw and fragile, and that's fully understandable. I would just hope that survivor, if in a scenario, I just hope that survivor knows that I would never be angry with them and would never be disappointed within them. Yes, it would be difficult, but that's pretty much it, And depending on the situations, that it doesn't mean it's over. There could still be hope, It's not dead. It's not being ruined. No. So that's just like these scenarios, and like how it can escalate from small scale, early stage, longer. Closeness can equal danger. Danger can equal vulnerability. Vulnerability can equal flashbacks, and it can lead to a pushback. It can lead to avoidant attachment, avoidant behavior, push-pull dynamics, triggered with everything else around, possibly leading to freezes and episodes and much more. But I have done a video on when it does get tough, if a survivor does have more episodes, or it comes back, or nightmares, or a freeze, that could possibly be a hidden sign that you are healing or on the process to healing and recovery. Before it gets better, it feels worse, whether it's triggered by a new relationship or indirectly because of the past. It can be a sign that the past is drifting away and you're focusing more on the future, and that separation is what's causing the demons to speak louder than ever. If you want more clarity, though, on all that, there is a video in the playlist top right corner up there. Be sure to check out when you have time. But I think we'll leave it there for now. I think we've covered enough already. Shout out to those that were able to watch the video last night, for however long it was, and if anyone did manage to watch this video as well. Just wanted to provide a different perspective and point of view from a different lens of someone on the outside looking in, someone that may be out of their depth or not have gone through what a survivor has gone through, but to be able to provide that perspective that not every situation or encounter will be bad or dangerous or full of people that will abandon the other. There can still be some form of hope at times. But it's just perspective and an opinion. So hopefully it helps in some way, and appreciate it if you did watch. If you want to hit the thumbs up or share the video so other people get to see this, or if you know of anyone that it might help, share it. Okay, so I don't represent every other human on this earth. Not every other human on this earth will react or think the same way as me. Just take that as caution, as a heads up. But yeah, hopefully it helps. So take care for now. Goodbye and good night.